Hey everybody, welcome to my studio. Today's video is all about how I love to take a reference that's from a specific season. In this case, it's summer, and I'm going to be using a different palette of pastels to turn it into a winter painting. This was a really fun video to put together, and I hope you enjoy something and that you learn something. Thank you for watching. This is Bethany, and I am so excited about this painting and this palette. You would never believe this reference. It's going to pop up right here on the left. And yes, this is a summer reference from the beautiful mountains of Ruidoso, New Mexico, which is in northeast New Mexico. And this is a family cabin that we are fortunate enough to get to go to every now and then. And this is the little river right in front of the cabin. And this was in the height of summer, July. And so how are we going to make this into a winter piece? Well, I'm excited to show you that process. But first of all, I'll just tell you what I'm using. This is a piece of about, I would say, a little under 12 by 12-ish. It's not quite square. Piece of UArt sanded paper. It's 500 grit. You can even see this is the end of my roll. I order it in a huge roll, and you can see that bottom portion is a little wrinkled. That doesn't bother me because that area would probably be cropped and cut off. What I've done is I have sketched in the very loose, more just the topography of this piece. You can see my angled line up there at the top. That represents the mountain as it comes down towards this very steep mountain as it comes down towards the bottom river. I've also sketched in the very loose shapes of the larger trees. I'm not at all thinking about detail here. All I'm doing is thinking of filling in the shapes. And yes, we're going to be painting some pine trees today, and you can see that I'm really just making almost sideways marks. Oops, it dropped my pastel right there. So for pine trees, I approach the mark making a little different. The scrubby grasses at the bottoms of the trees. But for pine trees, I make more linear marks and then more sideways marks. But I'm also really wanting to follow the natural path of the land. And so the marks that I make, especially on the angled sides, I really try to make sure that my marks make sense and how that plant, how that tree, how that bush would be growing in this environment. This is a NuPastel indigo color. I am not underpainting the water at this point. I'm kind of leaving that area vacant of pastel. Moving right into my alcohol wash underpainting, I'm wanting to push this pigment into the paper to form those larger shapes. I'm going to start with that tree over there on the left-hand side. You can see here how I angle my brush as if those grasses and trees are growing up the hill. So it's less up and down and it's more at an angle. So I really move my shoulder and my elbows around when I'm painting. I try not to paint from my wrist because that makes my paintings too tight. I'm trying to make these look like pine trees, and so I'm just scrubbing those colors in, that hue in, that indigo blue. Blue is such a great base, especially when you're painting with greens on top because they're analogous, and they also form a really great dark shadow automatically. I'm going to go right back in with my NuPastel and reestablish some of these pine trees. You can see I make a linear mark, and then I'm making very small marks in angular, up and down, and side to side. I'm also wanting there to be some underbrush on this little hill. That area that is kind of that triangular area is going to be more of where the snow is going to show. I'm also putting in more of the dark banks of the river. Now my paper is still wet here, and so you don't have to wait between alcohol to go right back in. I really like to form that value map in the very beginning, and so I'll often do several passes of alcohol and hard pastel. I'm going back in with a dark navy blue. Mirrors the underpainting color very well. So it's a gentle transition from the underpainting into more of the fine layers of dry pastel. Still trying to establish that dark base, and so I'm wanting to create very soft edges in my shadow shapes. I know it's a lot different than the reference photo, but you can see where I'm going. You can see I'm creating that dark shadow underneath that large mass of trees on the left-hand side. I'm wanting there to be some distant trees on this hill, on this mountaintop, off in the background. This is a dark green pastel. These are a favorite of mine. I want that sunlit bank right above the riverbank. You can kind of see that it's void of pastel right now. I want that to be my focal point. I want that to kind of be where the shadow and the light is hitting the snow, which is going to be contrasted with a darker, deeper water, icy river. And so I'm thinking that the sun is going to come across that top of that tree right where I'm hitting it and just splashing down on that little triangle of land, on that triangle of mountain. That is a way of thinking, where is my focal point and how can I highlight it? How can I arrange my light in a different way so it's not all just flat lit, but maybe some of it, how can I make it a little bit more dramatic? And that is one way to do it, is where's your focal point, make the light hit it and make everything else in shadow, or at least more in shadow, so it's not just kind of a flat lit piece. I'm starting to bring in some really great dark piney greens. This is dark green that I love, especially if I'm painting anything from the mountains. It's a great cool green. You can see that the marks that I'm making are angular, and so I'm not scumbling in an overall fashion like I would with a normal tree. I'm wanting to angle my marks down towards the edges of the paper at the bottom, and that will help you form those trees. I'm also adding a little hint of some blues off in the background. I'm playing with needing to push those back a little bit. I added the warmth of those distant trees on the treetops, but I'm going to knock them down a little bit with just a layer of blue. This is kind of how pastelists mix paint on our paper. This is how we layer color together, is you have to do it on your paper. We can't do it on a palette like oil painters or acrylic painters. And so layering that blue color on just helps push those trees back a little bit. And I'm also thinking about this mountainside and exactly what I want it to be, really taking a step back. And I know right now it kind of looks like a mess, but really what I'm going for is I'm going to start carving and cutting in this glowing sky color into the shapes I've already created. This is something I do often when I'm painting any kind of trees, especially distant trees. I'll put the trees in and then I'll cut the sky in around them, really soften those edges there, because that's going to help me create that really nice glow. You can see that it also automatically creates that feeling of this mountainside coming down at an angle when you're carving into your underpaintings and into those previous layers. So we're basically working big shape to smaller shape. Okay, so here's the fun part. I love starting to add in the snow, and you can see that I'm using, I'm really following the lines of that bank that's coming down towards the river. This is just a very kind of a medium ultramarine blue. If the sunlight is hitting that slight edge of that tree, where would the sunlight where would the sun be hitting the ground as well? This is a little bit of darker value. I decided I wanted it to be slightly darker. Using light touch will help you. You can always put a mark in, step back, see what you think about that value, if it's the correct value or not. If it's not, then you can either, if you used a light touch, you just go right back in and cover it up, or you can kind of even layer those values together to bring a little bit of variation to your colors. What I did there was I just decided to add that dark value, but with snow and ice along its edges. Now let's add some really, really warm, vibrant white. This is a very creamy white. This is not a pure white. And helping it, kind of cutting it in, showing where the light may be dappled. Adding in the bright sunlit snow is always icing on the cake. If you could restrain yourself to save to do it until the end, it just really starts to help reveal what you've been working on. So many times it's hard, especially whenever you're using a reference in a new way. It's hard to kind of see where you're going. At first, especially if you're new to techniques like this, where we're putting in massive value and then carving back into it, carving out, making those shapes smaller and smaller, and really defining what it is you're painting. At first it can kind of seem like I'm just making this big mess. What am I doing? But knowing the value map in the beginning and seeing, okay, I have the angles, I have the shapes, I've put in a good solid base, so I don't have to work so hard to cover this oatmeal colored paper. If you already have the paper basically toned, then you can really start to play with your references and create something new and unexpected. This is a piece that I have had for a long time, this reference, and I like the shapes within the reference. I like the gentle curve of the river. I liked the angle, but other than that, it just didn't really do anything for me. I just didn't really want to paint it as is. I thought, how about if we take something that's not snowy? It really opens up your world when you have the ability to do this. Any reference will work for you anytime, because you know how to take it, you know how to harness that color, harness the light, harness your values to create something really magical. I hope you enjoyed watching that painting come alive. I certainly love painting them for you. Thank you so much for being here and for watching this. If you like to help support this channel, keep these free videos coming, please consider visiting my Patreon page. The link is right here. I have several levels of support and I appreciate every single one of you. I can't wait to keep teaching you about the beauty of pastel. See you later.